Hello. Today, as part of our What's That About special interview coverage, we are excited to have John Hanratty, a candidate running for Cambridge City Council. And thanks for coming on our show, John.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Did I get your name right? I should have asked you first.
It's Hanratty.
Hanratty. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to live in Cambridge?
Yeah, sure. So, long story, but I'll keep it as short as I can. But yeah, so I graduated from college with a computer engineering degree, and while I was in college, this company called Apple appeared, and I became sort of enamored with the whole idea of startups, and so that was what my goal was all about, a high tech startup, either participating or starting one someday. And so when I graduated, I ended up in Dallas and designing circuits for to take clouds and fog out of satellite pictures in real time. Back then, it was a whiz bang thing. But while I was there, the IBM PC came out. And so a number of my friends and I decided, well, this is an interesting thing. Let's go quit our jobs and go do some work and see what we can make of this. And so we did. And we formed a company, went out and did some consulting. It was a very interesting time because there's no such thing as the World Wide Web or Windows or any of those other things. Hardly any software ran on the systems either. So just VisiCalc. And so we made it go for several years. And at a certain point, we are looking to do something more like a product. And that's where I ran into a wall in Dallas. And Dallas is a world-class city. It has lots of money. They have the opera and the museums, and they even had the Mavericks. That was a new club down there.
Hmm.
Not quite as not quite as like the Celtics,
Hmm.
but what I found they're a center of for oil and gas and finance and all of those things. So it's a great city, but I ran into a wall. There was no tech down there. That no one knew how to invest in tech. There weren't other tech people to talk to and hire, and the universities there were sort of TCU, SMU, North Texas. They had tech um, courses, but they really weren't leaders like Stanford and MIT. And so I decided I had to move. And I looked into Silicon Valley, and it was a set of malls with no sidewalks, hot, no restaurants or anything around, and nothing to do but just work. And then I came to Boston, and I fell in love with it because it was a walking city. It actually had seasons. There's lots of things to do and lots of people thinking about things. And I very quickly got hooked up with a company up in Billerica and realized that Boston wasn't very convenient, the North End. So I decided to move, and I looked around and I found Cambridge. And so Cambridge was a much easier commute for me. That was the first piece, but I also fell in love with the walking. It was a manageable size. You could get across town in 10 minutes at the time. It was a place where there was lots of people thinking about things. There was a lot of diversity of thought, cultures, and other things to take part in. And you could actually have a yard if you wanted to at that time. So that's where I landed, and I've been there for about almost 40 years. Been here and raised my son. He graduated from public school here a couple of years ago. Was off in college, and I started a couple companies here and took advantage of the ecosystem that it provided. So it's really been a great fit because I haven't run into a wall yet where in one stage of my life or one project or another thing, I couldn't find what I needed to be able to complete it or attack a problem. So it's been really a joy to be here. I sort of just to talk a little bit. My background is high tech startups, and what we do in startups is we will take a product, we will take an idea. We'll go out and develop it, go talk to some investors. We'll take a lot of beating from them and change it till it's financeable. And then we'll get some money and we'll spend 2 years working on it, talking to experts, talking to customers, stakeholders, and then we'll build a product. And we'll build the product, and invariably we go out to our first customer and they look at it and they say, that sucks. It's really bad. And so you go back and you work on it some more and it doesn't suck as much. And finally you get a really usable product. But it takes iterations to do that. It takes measurement. It takes criticism is your best friend to be able to get something to the stakeholders, the customers that you want. And I think that it translates to the city government. We need to, be willing to take some criticism. We need to know that we're not going to get everything right exactly the first time, and we need to build that into our laws and ordinances and zoning and say, well, yeah, we really intended it to do this. What was the goal? Are we doing it? No. Okay, so how do we fix it? And don't seem to be doing that at this point. So that's where I would like to add some value as a counselor. So that's my background. That's where I came from.
I hear you. And can you give me like it sounds like you have something in mind. What's a specific example where you take that kind of startup mentality where you iterate on a policy? Can you think of something that you have something in mind?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of obvious ones that are on top of most people's minds. Most recently, it was the upzoning for neighborhoods. The cycling safety ordinance is another one. For instance, the cycling safety ordinance only requirement is to build 26 miles of bike lanes,
Mhm.
and it has one design for every part of the city, no matter how dense and what traffic patterns they have, and they're going to put them in there, and they never even considered the side effects of putting those bike lanes in. So that it doesn't have a set of goals. What's the goal? Well, the goal is, I would think, is to reduce accidents and to make biking safer. And if we were to do that, we should measure to say, are we actually obtaining that and making that happen? Are we increasing bicycle usage in the city because of these bike lanes? Those are meaningful goals that you really should be measuring to see what happens. I think the ordinance for zoning for the multifamily zoning was based on some faulty data, some faulty projections. And that was pointed out, and many counselors looked at it and said, "Yeah, well, yeah, we know that, but we just don't have the votes to get it done." So I think being able to measure those things and being able to look at them and say, "Okay, what is the actual goal of doing this, and are we attaining that goal?" And along those lines, if you look at the same ordinance, the zoning, I think many of the counselors believed that we're going to increase affordable housing through inclusionary units.
Mhm.
And I think that there was an article in the Globe not too long ago that was talking about how it had failed to build any more inclusionary units, and it actually squashed multifamily housing for a market rate because there was this inclusionary cost a lot of money and wouldn't be able to finance. You're not able to finance it. So there was using that assumption. It was a big assumption on passing that zoning ordinance. And so I think what's going to happen is we're going to have some unintended consequences because of that. So.
Okay, let's stick with housing now. There's a lot to talk about there. I mean, as you know, this is one of the most expensive places to buy or rent in the country, and the council has tried to do a few things like the upzoning you're talking about, like the affordable housing overlay, removing parking minimums, and allowing ADUs.
Mhm.
How do you feel about those, each one specifically? So it sounds like, well, I'll let you talk.
Okay. Well, I think so. I think a lot of what's been done as far as I think ADUs make sense. I think that but I think that one size fits all zoning, and you can plop a tall building anywhere in the city, is without any parking is kind of abusive. And I think that there has to be some differentiation because the neighborhoods are very different, right? So if you go to Kendall Square, it's tall. Central Square is sort of tall. If you go out to the Highlands, it's not quite as tall, and people have yards and other things. So it's not you know, it's reasonable. It's not unreasonable to want to maintain some some consistency in your neighborhood to worry about traffic and other things. I'm looking at the AHO going in. They're trying to put it in on Mass Ave and Walden.
Yeah,
And
Newport's
there's
cool.
going to be no parking and no pullover. And you look at that and you go, well, there's no place for all those Amazon trucks to go. Um, where are they going to go? And at the same time they're changing the the Mass Ave into a single travel lane in each direction. So there will be no place to turn over except to stop in the middle of the street. So I think that you know one, neighborhoods and areas have different traffic patterns, they have different density, and I think we should treat them and take that into consideration in the zoning. I also think that the zoning doesn't take into account the other attributes of what's going on here. So, what about open space? Are we going to have a park for the kids to play on the swing set? Are we going to choke traffic off and double the density of an area? Utilities, schools, I guess, are falling in population right now for whatever reason, but schools might be okay. But are we really looking at this and saying, okay, as far as the total experience and livability of an area of the city, are we really looking at it as a whole versus just zoning? And I can see that in, for instance, the Mass Ave study that they did, the Mass Ave. Um,
Talk about the squares and
yeah, well, so there was a Mass Ave and Maps, it was called. And so what they did there is they got some of the community members, and then they got a bunch of CDD people and a facilitator from Philadelphia, and they came up with this whole design, and there was like 8 attributes to it. So one of it was, you know, tree coverage. Another one was um, open space. Another one was, is it a destination for people to come and do things? Was it walkable? And there was a bunch of things, and then there was building height.
yeah,
And so at the end of the day, the only thing that we had a place to go was building height, and it's going into a zoning ordinance, and the other ones are going to fall on the ground. I don't know who's picking them up, but I haven't seen anyone volunteer yet. So how do we get the open space, the destination design for the neighborhood and those things built in without somebody in charge of it, right?
yeah. Uh, there's been a couple there. There's the upzoning, which it sounds like you don't support the citywide 4 stories allowable and 6 stories with 20% affordable housing. I don't want to put words in your mouth. That sounds like you don't support that. That
Yeah, I think that it's going to have unintended consequences. I think that first of all, I don't think that inclusionary hasn't proven to be um, attractive and financeable. So I think I looked at the affordable housing inventory between 2003 and 2004. And I think there was only 2 neighborhoods that had any inclusionary housing permitted out of the whole thing. And there was one was permitted. It was like 100 in area in neighborhood 9. And I don't know where that was, but it sounds like it's one building. It could have been an upgrade. I don't know. But there was not a lot of inclusionary housing getting built. And the data that was quoted by the Globe says, and they were seeing the same thing in in San Francisco and other cities, is that the amount of inclusionary housing, if you're up in the 20% range, is difficult to finance, and it really crushes multifamily housing. So what you might end up with is just a bunch of market rate 9 unit buildings all over the city. And the market rate will basically be more expensive than what was there before. So what I'm seeing right now as a result of that ordinance is there's a bunch of speculators out buying up, like in North Cambridge, they have yards and a driveway, and there's a two-family, and it's a little bit older and maybe not as fancy as the new places, but they go in and they buy those up, and they're buying them up quickly. And what are they going to do? They're just trying to decide whether they should build, you know, they're not going to build inclusionary housing. They're going to figure out how to build a 4-story set of condos that they can sell at 1 million, 2 million, 3 million a piece.
And you're saying that's policy, that's being kind of dictated by policy. What would you have done differently, or what would you do differently to the? I mean, you say you're running for council. What would be the what would you pass to prevent this sort of thing?
Well, again, I think that the zoning needs to fit the area,
Hmm.
right? And I think it is, once again, it's a blanket solution. I'm not sure if it would have passed. Many of the counselors, I believed that they were going to get some affordable housing. So if you put that in front of the council and said we're not going to get any affordable housing or inclusionary housing, would they have voted the same? Maybe not. So I think that you have to be realistic about whether that's going to work or
Yeah.
not, and what it is it's going to deliver. And I think so. I think it needs to match the neighborhoods. A little bit of oversight is not a bad thing for these, but I think that the height and maybe the setbacks should be a little bit more nuanced for the areas they're going into.
Would you take away that 20% requirement for 6 stories and lower it? Is that what you're proposing?
Well, I think we need to revisit the inclusionary housing law, period, right? And so it might work at 10. We might get 20% of nothing is nothing, and 10% of 100 is one, or no, to 10, right? So um so I think that getting a law that works first, and that you're giving bonuses to people for 2 stories when the requirement is not going to work, it's not going to finance, is not a way to go. So I think we should revisit the inclusionary piece of all housing, right? And see if maybe a lower threshold is the right way to go.
Okay, maybe a lower threshold. And then I've heard you say that we need to be more neighborhood by neighborhood. So you would not support the upzoning citywide at all, it sounds like, and go to more, yeah.
Well, I think I don't have a problem with saying that multifamily can be, we can get rid of zoning for only single family. That doesn't mean you can't build single families there. That means you can build a multifamily.
Right.
But I think, allowing that might get you some more housing. But I think some areas, they have setbacks, and they are have a little bit more open area. They're not as high as other areas, and so we could nuance that a little bit more, uh, you know, by area. I think, yeah. So
One of the things you touched on was you said the schools. I mean, the schools are decreasing in a population. I, me personally, because I think people can't afford to live here on a working class salary anymore. Is
yeah.
there? Do you have is that something you would try to tackle?
Well, I think that the policies that we've gone through really take it from the middle class, right? So if you look at the they take their so if you look at what's going on with the upzoning for the neighborhoods. What's going to happen is they're going to buy less expensive houses that are naturally affordable, and the people that live there are going to have to leave, and that likely they're not going to be able to afford another place. And so, so we're going to end up with more housing at the at higher market rates in those areas. So it's going to sort of drive up the cost. I don't,
Can you walk
yeah.
me through real briefly how that works? Because if you're building more housing, how is that going to drive people out?
Well, the people that are there have been living affordably
Hmm.
usually it's a two family, and the landlord has, I'm a landlord myself, if you find a good tenant, you give them a good price, and even if they take care of the place, and you don't raise the rents, and that's where a lot of people are. And so um and usually the houses they're in are maybe a little bit older and need some care, and so they're not luxury apartments. Now, what people come in, they build these say 9 units because they don't have to do inclusionary. They can build them and charge 1 million or more. I've seen 2 million, 3 million a piece for
Hmm. Sure.
these condos. So I don't think people are going to it's going to raise the prices because people can, there's a demand for market rate. Does
Yeah.
that, does that make sense? I mean,
I mean, I understand the demand for market rate, but isn't that already there? I mean, I live in Central Square area. There's a house on Amory Street that was like a three-decker that just got knocked down, and they put like basically a two-family house there that cost $4 million.
yeah,
Uh, it's already happened. It's happening on Hancock Street here. The same thing.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, it's even more attractive to be able to build, instead of two family, build a four family or a six family and charge $3 million a piece for them, right? And so that's why there's sort of a land grab right now by speculators
mhm.
and developers to buy up those underutilized, quote unquote, um, uh, spaces where you have maybe an older house with two-decker, and it has a yard and a driveway, and they can build up to the lot lines right now and not put any parking in. And I don't know, if your market rate, I believe that you're going to have to put some parking in to sell. If somebody's going to spend 1.5 million for a condo, they're probably going to want a parking space, but we'll see. I
But
don't
they
know.
can put parking in if they want, right? They're
They
just
can. They can. I'm just saying that
yeah.
I was saying they could get rid of parking, but I think they're gonna want it. But
So just unless there's more you want to say about housing, but just so I'm clear, you're saying that because the zoning is now making these properties more valuable, more people are going to want to sell and cash in, and that's going to drive out renters.
it's gonna cash in, yeah, and I don't or it's gonna make rents so much higher, one of the two. But because the new units are gonna be new fangled market rate
Hmm.
um
New building.
places. I
Yeah.
mean, and the other thing that I don't believe, and maybe people believe this, is that you're going to fix this with supply. You're going to lower prices with supply. I don't think that we're anywhere near satisfying the supply. And so even if we doubled the number of houses, which I don't think we have room for,
Mhm.
uh, I don't know if we're going to lower prices. Now, demand is another way to fix it. And if people don't want the places, then the prices will go down. But it's going to have to become a crappy place to live,
Right.
right? And I don't think we want to use that strategy.
This isn't Cambridge specific, but it's, I mean, I think everyone or anyone who thinks about this knows this is a regional problem of housing. Do you support the Communities Act, the MBTA Communities Act, which tried to encourage changing zoning around, public transportation?
Yeah, In principle, yes. I think that, that there's an opportunity with transportation to be able to so I've done a little study where I went out and I went out towards the along the commuter rails and said, what's the average rent?
Mhm.
And as you get out there, you can half your rent almost from Cambridge as you go out the commuter rail. And so whether they have housing right next to the 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 T stop or not, I think that you can find more affordable housing out farther. And maybe that they'll be expensive right next to the T stop. I don't know. But so I'm sort of on the fence on that one. I don't, you know, I think sure you could build it. You could um, build close to the T and zone it so people could build multifamilies next to the T. That sort of makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
I
Um,
don't.
okay. Yeah, we can circle back, but can you, why are you running for council? What would you say is are your highest priority issues? What do you care about, and what do you
Sure.
like to change?
So I have three issues that I consistently talk with people about, and other issues are very important, but these are the ones that they think about. So first is, neighborhood voice. I think that the perception and the experience of neighborhoods with the city is that they really have very little input, and when there is a initiative, usually they're the last to know, and they get shown a here's what we're going to do. We'd like your input, but it's already pretty well baked by the time it gets to the neighborhood. And it takes a long time for neighborhoods to actually organize around these things so that they can have an opinion and have a voice. So I think that, for example, zoning or bike lanes, I was just down on Broadway in the last couple months where the community spoke up and they said we really need parking, and they put a petition together with 1,000 signatures on it. They sent 300 emails in. They had a community meeting they invited the counselors to, where 100 people got up and spoke about their parking needs. And then they spoke. And then there was charter righted, and they went back and did it again. And it was completely ignored. They built the bike lanes, they're going to take the parking. And so that's happened time and time again, where the city comes in and they do their community meetings under the auspices of input, and they don't really do it. And the communities are disadvantaged because, in bike lanes or in zoning, there are well established lobbies that are very much on message, and they can call up their masses and get 600 signatures on a petition very quickly for any purpose. Where the neighborhoods aren't organized, they're all living their lives, sending people to school, etc. So I think that the neighborhoods are extremely important. We have to give them respect. They're the strength of the city. They're very diverse. They're vibrant. And that's we really have to take into consideration, the small businesses there, the people there, how they get around, the all of the attributes that make a community a community and a unique community. So that's one. And the next one and I touched on it earlier, is just accountability. Is if you're going to pass a law and or a zoning law or a policy, whatever it might be, we should really, base it on data and base it on facts that you've checked, and the council should be responsible for considering the right facts, because they're supposed to be wise and be weighing one decision over another and weighing the community's needs over another. And if they're not using the facts in the beginning, and then be very definitive of what you want to accomplish. What is the goal of this? I mean, it's something meaningful, not mileage of bikes or whatever it might be. It's like we want safety, and the safety, and we want to increase safety, and we're going to measure it. And finally, being willing to go back and based on measurement and make some adjustments. And so whether it's a zoning act or it's a a parking act or whatever it might be that they would put into place, are they actually being effective in spending the taxpayer money wisely? And then finally is fiscal responsibility. And people are seem to be getting more alert on this. It's been publicized as Kendall Square is going vacant by, I think 22% was the last number I saw. That's going to take a cut out of our tax revenue. The feds are cutting things. We're not building as much commercial space as we used to, so the fees are not coming in. And so our revenue side of a city is starting to fall. And so we've had several decades of a 2-for-1 match. You put in $1 as a resident and you get $2 from the commercial side. And that's about to shift. And so even with that 2-to-1 match, over the last 3 years, we raised taxes by 25%. So we didn't have enough money with the 2-to-1 match, but we figured out how to spend 25% more. So going forward, we have to recognize this. The burden's going to go on to the residential taxpayers, which is going to raise housing costs even more. And it's going to be passed through to renters, raising their costs. So we have to, it's going to happen. We're going to have to raise taxes, but at the same time, the council needs to sit back and go, okay, these are our priorities. And now, do we really need to do this versus that, and make some hard decisions and keep the budget from growing if at all possible, because that gets just passed on to the residents, and it raises the cost of housing and everything else. So it's really the job of the council to give us a set of priorities and make some decisions that we may not be popular, or it may just make sense because some programs may not be working right now. So we should really do that. So those
Yeah,
are
you're covering one of my later questions here that and I've asked this of everybody that we've talked to so far. I mean, yeah, revenues are obviously going to decrease. It seems like the federal government is intentionally spiking our economy. Um, do you support increased taxes if necessary? And if you don't, are there items that you think that the city should cut right now?
well, I think so. First of all, I think that taxes are going to go up.
Hmm.
And the question is how much?
Okay.
And so if we don't recognize that everything we put on the platter is going to raise taxes more,
Mhm.
we're doing a disservice for the citizens of the city. And in fact, it's going to be more, and you're going to get less services out of the whole thing. And so because the costs are going up a little bit. So I think that I would not lock our hands that we wouldn't raise taxes, but I would like to make sure that when we do, we really have to. I would love to keep it even and let us grow into it. That would be a goal that we should have. But I think, and cutting things, we'd have to go through our priorities. It's a priority discussion, and it's not my priorities. It would be, the cities and the neighborhoods and all to sort of say it's more important to build more housing than it is to build bike lanes, or it's uh, to put in homeless programs is more important than this and that. And so if you look at the top, it's a regular thing you do in business is you look at your top expenses and you decide, do I have my priorities right? Am I spending money wisely, and could I get 10% out of this,
Mhm.
10% out of my biggest one, and I could have a higher impact. So just looking through the budget, and the city manager should be doing this because that's his job. But but really emphasizing the fact that we really want to do this, and that the city council has to provide the city manager some priorities for doing that, for doing things. So it may be we don't get rid of things, we just slow them down,
Mm.
or or there's all sorts of cap when you spend $300 million on a school or whatever the number was. That's something that goes into your expenses for the next 20 years, right? You're paying that off in debt service. You have to pay it back.
Yeah.
And so some of these large capital expenditures might be considered or cut back a little bit so that we don't have to take on as much debt service. So there's a lot of places you could probably trim. There's some places you could cut, and that I think that would have to be a discussion on priorities. And my priorities don't really matter. It's what the city thinks,
Well,
right?
this is your opportunity to, what's your priorities?
Yeah.
What, yeah, why don't you, what's your priority here?
Well, I don't. I think that the first of all, we have to cover our debts, right? And we have to cover salaries. My priority would be not to cut people, right? You don't want to cut people, maybe natural attrition, a freeze. I think that, I don't know what we're doing, the housing. Seem to have a big big pile of cash there. Do we have enough? Do we have not enough? What are we doing with that? The bike lanes we're spending a lot of money on, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions of dollars to do those. Should we be cutting those back? Or should we not do any more, right? Or we finish CSO and we're done. But I don't think CSO is done. So there's, I don't have a laundry list for you, but those are all. I think there's areas where we can trim, and there's probably a few areas where we can cut, and that's what we need to do.
Okay. Let's get a little more on the positive side of Cambridge here. Like
Yep.
what's your favorite part of living in Cambridge? Do you have any favorite like neighborhoods or places to visit, stuff like that?
Well, I mean, I have a dog, and so we love to go down to Fresh Pond because he can run around and go swimming and stuff. So that's really an oasis out, within a very dense city,
Mhm.
that you can walk around. So I really enjoy that area. And the golf course there too. I like the golf on the golf course, and that's a hidden charm there that it's a diamond hidden away there, and it's used by seniors and high school kids and everybody in between of every shape, color, and creed. And it's a fun place to go. And what you do is you go down and you put down your $20. You get a tea time and you end up with three other people you never met before. And they can be the most interesting conversation you'll have because they could be, Harvard professors or restaurant workers or construction workers or just a bunch of high school kids. And so I've had really enjoyed, meeting all the various people there, in that area. So, and my wife and I like to eat out. So we have some good restaurants in town, and we like to go out occasionally and try those out. So I think that's one part of the city that's can be a lot of fun, is going out and exploring the various restaurants as they open up and
Yeah.
discover things. So,
Is there anything you would do to or opportunities you see to improve the quality of life in the city? Do you have any ideas to bolster the cultural life or um,
well, I mean, cultural life. I think so. I think one thing that we really are missing is the open space. Where do we have places where community can meet and parks or community centers where people can get together. Um, I would love to see more, sort of square areas where there's some open space for people to commune and get to know each other. Because in my neighborhood, I walk along the sidewalks and I see everybody, and you say hello to them, and having another place to go. Somebody mentioned that Porter Square, where I live, has a lot of coffee shops, and I said, well, that's the only place we can go meet. So we don't have any parks or anything there. So I think that, thinking about open space, places for people to commune. I don't, even as we're looking at the corridors as a place to pack housing,
Yes, square.
maybe maybe there's a way to sort of build out an area that's off the corridors that caters to more specialty shops, right? And somehow get that developed where, you could go and walk over to it. And I think, like, what's the one over in Union Square, the
Bow Market.
Bow Market. So that has a lot of little funky little shops in there, and it's fun to go in there and walk around. To be able to develop that type of environment here would be great. I mean, to first encourage more, new shops and small shops. I mean, one of the things about Mass Ave is that a lot of immigrants have come here and made their new life, and they put up a shop, or they were from Ethiopia or from uh, um, Pakistan or wherever it was. They put up a shop or a restaurant along there, and the assumption was there's a lot of traffic here, and they can park, and they've built up their businesses, and they've given us a lot of variety of things to try and do along that corridor. And I'm just afraid that we're going to lose those people, and we're going to lose their follow-on people who are coming over for a new life to start a little shop, or a little business, a little restaurant, and provide a real service to folks, and a lot of variety for the neighborhoods. And so I would love to see a way to sort of encourage that, an area where people could go, these shops would be available to them. And so yeah, so that's a couple ideas there.
Along those lines, do you have a plan to address vacant storefront spaces that we see all through Central Square, Harvard Square, valuable properties that are just sitting fallow, basically?
Yeah, I haven't followed what the proposal are on those. I think that, yeah, there are it's probably, there's some legalities around, telling a landlord what they can do and what they can't do with their lands. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that one. I'm going to have to say, it's unfortunate they are having problems. And I don't have a good feel for whether it's just they're sitting on the property and they're not doing something, or they just don't believe that they can make a go of it, given the configuration of the area or whatever it might be. So, I think people have been saying, well, we should fine them, or tax them at a higher rate or something like that. So I don't know what the legalities of that are, but if they're just sitting on it, um, you know, you want to do some encouragement there. I don't know so I haven't studied it, so I don't know why they're sitting on it.
Yeah,
And if I had more data on that, I would render an opinion.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I hear you. I
I
mean,
guess, I guess it's better not to render an opinion when you don't know anything about it. Right?
seems like there's existing properties that people could, if they could afford it, could open the store. But I guess open their own
I mean
accounts.
the theater there is a big place,
Yeah, yeah. The
and
theater.
and it's not really configured for small stores, so you'd have to find something kind of big, or really break it into something smaller to make it work. So it's not a trivial thing to do, but you really have to have the traffic for the configuration that you want to
Yeah,
build. Are people going to movie theaters anymore?
I am.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Brattle's pretty full most of the time, but I'm just thinking of all the stores. I mean, half the stores in Central Square, they're not all big stores. They're just, and there's plenty of traffic there. Um,
Yeah. I yeah, I don't know. I think that, that's another interesting piece here is that a lot of what these plans are for the city are to build tall buildings and put retail on the first floor.
yep,
But when I look around at some of the new buildings that are going in with retail on the first floor, they're empty also.
yeah,
And so they're not really renting them out. So I don't know whether, the rents are going up, are much higher there than they're expected to be. I know that in Porter Square Mall, they're seeing some rent increases, which have pushed a few people out.
yep.
And yeah, so I don't know.
Mhm. If you were on the city council this last session, is there, as you know, the council elects their mayor. Is there someone you would have supported for mayor?
Um, I like Denise. I think she's
Denise Simmons.
yes, she's usually a very reasonable, thoughtful person. When she speaks up, she's bringing up the points, and a lot of times when the rest of the counselors are being a little bit um, illogical, she'll bring them back in. So I think she's done a good job. I don't know if she'll be the next one, but I think she's done a good job. Um, of the bunch, I think that was a good choice. Yes.
Yeah. And it sounds like you don't have a regular commute. Do you use public transportation? Do you drive? Do you walk? Like, how do you get around Cambridge?
I mostly walk.
Mhm.
I have a car because I have commitments outside of town.
Mhm.
So, maybe once a week I'll drive my car. But mostly walking and, so that's it. And public transportation will take the T. So they take advantage of all those things. I think that's the case for a lot of people in town. People have cars and they use them infrequently, but when they need them, they need them. And
Yep.
they really you live in Cambridge because you can walk a lot of places and you can catch the T into Boston or wherever you want to go. So I don't think I'm, uh, you know, anywhere odd on that. I'll even ride a bike once in a while. So,
Yeah, I mean that's why I moved here because of the public transportation and
yeah.
technology and stuff like that. And I have a car, and I try not to use it very much because it's a pain. Um, is there anything else you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered?
Um, I think we've covered quite a bit there. I'm trying to think if there's anything that we really. No, we've covered a lot of issues, and I think that there's a difference between campaigning and being a city councilor, right? And there's a lot of issues that I'm seeing bubbling up. In fact, this morning I spent an hour with a woman that was talking about homeless people doing drugs under her window, and I run into that in in Central Square where I talk about we talk about the main topics of the campaign, and the person says, well, those are all you're all right on those. I agree with you, but a real problem here is people, homeless people, and that are addicted, and they're not allowed to be in the shelters, and they're using my front yard as the bathroom and a place to take drugs.
Mhm.
And so, I think we do have a homeless problem, and it's not a matter of it's less about housing and more about mental health and addiction and bad luck. When sometimes somebody gets sick and they can't make their payments and they get thrown out of their house or whatever it might be. Those types of things we have to figure out how to address. Addiction is a hard one, right? It's a very difficult one to deal with, and when you're an addict, you really have to want to get better. to make it work. And you have to figure out how to help them do that. So,
Do you have any thoughts on how to do that, like a transitional housing or supervised injection sites or more treatment facilities?
well, I think supervised injection sites and those types of things are sort of a band-aid, but maybe a good one. I think that it gets the people off the street,
Mhm.
out of people's yards, and allows them a safe place to do what they were going to do anyway and not leave. So the problem that we're seeing in Porter Square is we see 1,000 needles a year
Yeah,
that are picked up right in the by the T stop there, and 10,000 are over in Central Square. So there's a dangerous piece of this also. So how do we deal with it? So maybe injection sites, but at the end of the day, you know, uh, I was talking with the woman. She's a nurse, and she goes, well, they really have to want to. Um, they have to want to get off, and if they don't have the will, it's not going to happen. And so, how do we help them? I don't. That's a good question. It's how you have to be there when they're really down, or they're at a decision point to really catch them and change them. That's so, but it's a problem, but it's also, not an easy problem to solve. But and you know, so
okay. Yeah, I don't think anyone really has an answer, but it doesn't seem like we've been trying very much lately on a national level.
yeah,
All right. Yeah, thank you for coming on, John. Thanks for being our guest. If you think anything else, or if something comes up that you didn't felt we didn't cover, just let me know. I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
well, I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with.
All right, and good luck on the campaign trail. And
And vote me number one.
okay,
I'm being a candidate. I got to ask you.
yep, appreciate it.
So, all right, thanks.
All right, thank you. Have a good day. Thanks. Good weekend.
You too.